cleaned every nook and cranny,
still
reassembled
not the
it.
code I want.
Computer worked fine,
Or I could
keyboard
get this
never
web
works
package
well
version
again.
With all
Keyboard
this
was just,
extra code, I'm
like
like,
even
oh,
with all of my
I
meticulous
just
cleaning,
want
keyboard was just trashed.
What happened?
So that's my
Terrible
experience
accident.
with that.
Yeah, I was explaining the background why I
No,
can't be trusted
I've
with
done
a drink
little bit other stuff with
and a
Rust. I
laptop.
built,
It's only a drink
You know what the drone
or a
CI?
laptop.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
I learned
I
when I
mean,
started
it's a
drinking
CI/CD
Diet
type
Pop
thing
that if you
can, like,
spill your Diet
self-wash.
Pop, cleanup, not bad. Because it's not sticky for the rest of your life.
It doesn't
Yeah, and
make
aspartame
it
or whatever
and
doesn't do the
I
sticky
wanted to
thing.
call
I mean,
webhook to just trigger a bill.
Certainly nothing like.
And
So
I
if
built
only
a
it had been
little
diet
Rust,
root beer, I would have been okay.
web server that just
I mean,
hits the drone API.
That's my problem.
What'd you do to make the server?
Fun fact, I got into diet A&W root beer.
Work.
Not diet, it was like zero? No, I think they called it. Got into it one summer.
I like,
Oh my gosh,
I've
it's
looked
diet.
at all
It's
those different
fine.
frameworks
I
for
started
like
drinking
web stuff
like
because I'm generally
6
a
or
web
8
guy.
or 10 a day.
And
Jeez.
work
Wow.
made the
After
most
a few
sense
weeks,
as I was
started
looking
getting
at it,
these
but I'm
weird
coming from a
silvery
JavaScript back
streaks in
in.
my teeth.
Like not even
And I
TypeScript,
freaked out and I
even
stopped drinking it
JavaScript.
and they went away.
Types are hard.
I'm just like, okay,
Oh my
I don't know what that was,
Hey,
but I don't want it.
That store stuff, I don't want to know.
Scared me straight.
Big and
just want to be able to
Yeah,
add it.
yeah.
I've never heard of that happening. It's crazy.
I don't even know what that was.
very
It was like,
slowly.
I want to know what it was.
I don't know, I don't want to know. It's so freaking, I'm just like, I hope I didn't do anything permanent to myself. I mean, maybe it's good that I went way too extreme so fast.
Oh my gosh.
Something snapped me
Yeah,
out
and
of it.
that solved like.
My favorite soft drink, they
5%
only have it
of all
here in
the things
Utah,
I was
apple
struggling
beer.
with. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
It's good stuff. I
Yeah.
once went to this arcade
I
in
did
Provo.
post that.
They had a soda fountain with
Yeah,
apple beer.
yeah.
Very cool.
And do you like Brigham's Brew?
I have not tried it yet.
Dude,
You
do
should
you
just
like root beer?
reorder
I
these
love root
variables.
You would love Brigham's Brew.
Oh.
Ooh. That sounds like something I shouldn't try. Because I may get hooked.
Yeah,
it's
if
really,
you wanna
it's
do
really
the
sweet.
little-
But,
As long as you're not doing
Sugar.
7,
I
8
think
cups
I
a
did
day, I
post
think
it
you should be
online.
fine. I don't think you're intending to do that.
Yeah.
Where do you work?
Moderation and all things, right?
Oh, sweet. Are they is that Elixir?
The other day I dropped my laptop and I was like, uh-oh. But fortunately everything's okay so far.
Are you guys switching over to 18?
We're going to
Generics?
everything.
Really?
I mean, we need to rebuild a lot of stuff, but I'm just waiting for the dispatch to go faster. But we'll start playing with it, which is not a huge priority because it's probably going to be slow for another.
I don't think the generics I was a little surprised about.
So what countries did you go to on your cruise?
We went to
Are
the
you telling
British
me to go
Virgin
18?
Isles, the
Drop
US
like
Virgin
same
Isles,
time as Java.
and Disney's Bahama
Go 18
Island.
dropped like what, 3 weeks ago?
So, yeah.
Java 18 dropped
I
like.
have this friend, she's from
Yeah.
Tobago, Trinidad and
There you
Tobago.
go.
I could not understand anything that person says. Nothing.
Yeah.
And it goes mutual. I don't think she understands anything I say.
Because I mean,
It's strange because I can understand
I'm still
what
getting
people
used to
from
it a
Britain
little bit,
say,
but because I mean, you
or
can
people
do
with
just
thick Indian
with
accent,
base
but
functions.
Indian accent,
Can't
but
add
right.
methods, and then you attach to a
Nope.
string.
Right.
Like, just doesn't
understand.
work.
Two
Yeah,
different
Which
ones.
is kind of
different.
weird.
Yeah.
But
my
it's
goal
English.
is to rewrite
I
some
guess
of
so.
our-
I think
like,
it used to be a former British colony, so I think it is.
Layer on Go. I looked at what gRPC was doing, so I basically implemented it how they did, but then we use maps.
I asked her if she knew any other languages other than English. She
So
said
instead of
no.
like the HTTP,
Oh, well, there you go.
whatever.
It means it's not French or something.
Nope, not
But,
That's cool.
well, it's brokered, so you don't need like service discovery and the way our infrastructure works with Pride. It made a lot more sense to do that. And it worked out great. We've been on that for a number of years. However, now I want to go back and undo the code gen with templates and actually use generics and solve it, make it cleaner.
Gotcha.
And
There we go.
do something similar.
That's the right one.
With our, we also have a bunch of generators. So Ruby is like the primary thing, so it's like a Ruby on Rails app. we've taken different pieces out of it, of our RPC server that we've implemented there, and put it in Go.
Where do you work?
We kind of like optimize that. MX.
Oh, interesting.
So we kind of optimize like JRD as far as we can go, and then like just try and go, make it like 4 times faster.
I was gonna say, because yeah.
I got
that's-
the taco
that's pretty
pizza
big
too. It's
difference
pretty
right there.
good.
Yeah, that's like.
Tacos, that was-
So
I think that's what
I'm
it
excited
is.
to go back.
Taco pizza.
Try to clean that up.
Which
so-
one?
Into Rust, is that what you're?
I've already
That
put it
one,
into
yeah.
Rust,
I
so-
think that's
Have you
what
really?
It's not in production, but I've totally re-implemented it into
Good.
Rust just for fun.
It has the speed.
Oh, I mean, it's at that point you're waiting on the database.
Yeah, exactly.
Nanosecond, 2 milliseconds, nanosecond, you know. But so the performance doesn't change, but it certainly is a lot more fun.
So-
What was your phototaxi back then?
We have at least one person waiting for something amazing to
Did you
happen.
guys climb millionaires?
Yeah.
You know?
I'm always waiting for
Just got
something
off the
amazing
bus.
to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
You got it. You got it. You got what I was talking about, didn't you?
So.
Who, me?
No, the Incredibles. The kid goes, "What are you waiting for? Something amazing, I guess."
You and me both.
Anyway.
I'm the same way. I just play with Rust with personal projects and stuff, but like, yeah, I've tried to like write something in it, and they're like, no.
So let's see. There's the channel.
They're like, it's not gonna happen
Guess
because
I
I
actually
want
don't need your
everyone to know
channel.
what's
There's
going
the
on.
Jitsi.
But I
Okay,
also
cool.
have to learn Rust in order to fix or modify.
Yeah.
Go to the future.
Cool beans, cool beans.
Yeah.
But I want job security.
So,
I'm trying to convince more of the team. More of the team is curious, and if more people get curious, then we'll probably start using Rust. But like I said, we had like a Kubernetes operator that just needed to watch deployments and then pick off a pod stack, and just generate a batch job from the pod stack. Anyone could rewrite this in a day, do it in Rust, because I wanted to play with the.
here.
And it's great. It's good for you. Works great.
I hereby call the meeting to order.
Yay.
See, I'm not gonna lie, now that's it.
All right.
I really
So-
need to. Oh.
I want to give a warm welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Let's just do go around real quick and do names. I'll try, because then you can see how embarrassing it is for me that I come here every time and I see many of you over and over again. And so if I can't remember your name, that opens the floor to everybody else to not remember any names either. So first of all, I don't even want to do this because I'm already blanking on names. It's Christian. I know Christian.
Hope so.
And I know your name. I forgot Jeff's names earlier today. I was trying to talk about Jeff, and I
Oh
was,
man, Jeff's like the only name I remember right now.
yeah. Well, anyway, so I had his face in my head, clearly saw his face, and could not remember his name, and that's what's happening right now.
I texted you. I'm excited to come tomorrow. Excited to see you.
I know who you are.
Okay.
I know who you are. It's just I'm having a moment of face blindness, except with name blindness.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna
it's
do.
totally.
We're not gonna have you say everyone's name. Everyone's gonna say their name.
That'd be a lot faster.
Yes.
We're gonna do that.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have to say your name because I
My
can't.
name is Spencer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Spencer. See, I knew your name was Spencer. I know your name because we
I
chat
know
all the time.
Spencer the last time I
Yeah.
asked you.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
buddies.
Wow, no change.
Yeah. Now, your name is Jordan. No, it's not Jordan. No, I don't know.
Jared.
Jared.
Hey, you were close. You got the J
Yes.
and the
Jared.
R and the D.
You're new, so I don't have any burden.
Good word guess is what that was.
All right. Good. Good. We got Matthew. And then your name's Jordan.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. And then we got I don't know you,
Dallin.
Dallin, but
Looks like everyone-
you've come before.
I've come.
He's come
a few
lots.
times.
Didn't you present once?
No, my buddy that I normally come with has presented.
Okay. All right. So we got Dallin, then we got
I'm Garrett.
Garrett, and I think I should know you as well.
We've met a few times, but
Yeah.
only briefly in passing.
Okay.
Garrett went to Go West.
I did.
That's
I
it.
recognize a lot of faces from that.
All right. And
Don't
then we
you tell you
got
my name.
Nathan.
Oh dang it.
Well, I almost
Clean cut.
I took a bite of pizza because I had to think for a second because I had to think clean cut is
How
exactly.
come everyone remembers my username? That's weird.
Because
Because you put it
it's
everywhere.
such a good brand.
username.
It's such a good brand.
Well, you know, it did take me 20 years to come up with. So.
And then we got Will. And then we got, I'm AJ.
I feel like there's some bias if you remember your coworkers.
So anyway, welcome out tonight, everybody. So I was gonna say let's do a review of the book again now that we had more time to read it, the Rust for Rustations.
Oh,
But-
it's so good.
Yeah,
I
we were
finished.
supposed to read that.
It was so good.
Well, the thing that happened with me is that just a lot of things happened, and so the last month and a half for me has been pretty crazy, and so I've not had the time to invest in it. So instead, I said, you know what? We'll just do lightning talks and show and tell, and if nothing else, we've got Nathan here with us. So if all else fails, he can just have the whole time because he's always got interesting projects and is good at teaching people.
I think what he's saying is I'm very talkative and he can't shut me up.
No, that's me. That's me. I don't find you to be.
You fill the time, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't find that to be the case at all. Anyway, so
You're the state president.
yeah, welcome to Utah Rust, and welcome to those of you that are joining in online. I see we've got a few people joining in online. We're not sure what we're going to do tonight because we don't have any scheduled presentations, but we're just to hang out, show and tell. So I have here
What's in a line? Did you say in a line? Oh, or did you say online?
online. There's some people that are joining in online.
My ears were broken.
I have the magic HDMI cord. If you plug into this and we pray to the HDMI gods and offer a sacrifice, then it will take less than 10 minutes for us to see your computer screen on the big screen.
Or it'll short out your computer.
Or no, that's probably not going to happen. Actually, the voltage is just—it's
All
not.
the time that
Nope, it's not going to work. But so, does anybody have a project that they're working on that they'd like to show and tell, or something that they learned about that they'd like to do a 5-minute presentation on, or a 2-minute presentation on, or a one check out this documentation page that I saw today presentation on?
I have been reading the book.
Oh yeah. All right.
And I'm on ownership,
Yeah.
the chapter 4, and it's pretty interesting because it's like when it rips it off the stack. I'm just learning how that works. So why an int is different than a capital string, like a string, not a string literal. It's the other one.
STR.
Yeah, the str is the string of byte characters, and capital string is the box container pointer thingy.
Yeah.
I guess not a box, but a pointer container thingy.
Yep. So I'm just going through ownership, and it is pretty cool, and I sort of understand it. But yeah, it's interesting because in JavaScript, I would always have the problem where I would copy something and wouldn't realize I was just copying the reference, and then I would do a mutation, then it would have some bad side effect, and I tried to do that in Rust, can't do it.
Nope. Not gonna let
And
you.
I was like, that's pretty neat. So, so it was fun to experiment with that.
I don't want to think that you can't do it. You just have to do it on purpose.
If you do the unsafe thing?
No, you could pass. Well, you can pass a reference over somewhere, and you can change it, and then you could take the reference back and then have the changed object.
You just have to say, this is mutable, and I'm going to intentionally let this guy.
Yeah, you can't do it on accident as easily.
Well, I have a
It's hard to
question
do it
about
on
that because I've been playing around a little bit with Rust, and I noticed that the ownership principle. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reason they have that is to protect against race conditions.
Among other things.
And the question is, why do they have that feature?
It's also for memory safety as well. So, are you familiar with the concept of a dangling pointer?
No.
Okay, so like in C or C++, those types of languages, you have pointers, like raw pointers to memory. And what you usually do is you create an object, you allocate some memory for an object, and then you have a pointer to it. Well, if you go and free that memory, and then you try to use the pointer, that's called using a dangling pointer. And what happens is
Use after free.
yeah, it's totally up to the language what happens. Maybe you access the bytes and they happen to still be there and you get a spooky, it works okay. Or maybe it's been reclaimed and used by something else and you just totally mess up your program in weird spooky ways. Who knows?
or memory protection will crash your app, or
The best problems are the ones that work 99% of the time.
By best, you mean most.
Heinous,
Yes, there you go.
egregious,
Yeah.
pernicious.
But that's how you could access other programs stuff,
Yes,
and where you
which
get-
is a security.
which is a major security issue.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so that's the class of problems the ownership protects from. So there's lots of other examples, like a null pointer dereference. When you have a pointer to memory that's not pointing to memory, and you try to dereference it and use it, and it's like this goes to 0, and that's protected by the operating system, like you're doing something stupid, crash.
I've seen no pointer references. So with ownership, that's not a problem anymore. Is that what we're
Exactly,
getting? Okay.
exactly.
it goes into the I'm gonna butcher there's the phrase that the Rust book says. It's like something is allocation or whatever. Creation is.
Resource acquisition is initialization.
Thank you.
Already done.
I knew somebody was gonna.
It's a C++ concept too.
Yeah, it's a C++ concept that people are supposed to use in C++ to keep themselves safe, but don't. I mean, in practice, it's just hard to do all the time because we're humans and we're really bad at following rules.
Until somebody makes us.
Until somebody makes it.
but I think that's interesting because everyone's like, this is like at first I'm like, this is so stupid. Why are we doing this?
I know.
Like why
These ownership rules are making it hard.
Yeah. But then after a while you're like I'm sure it will. I'll come into it and realize, okay, this is why we really need to do this.
You get no dinger pointers. You get no null references. You don't get that shared references.
Shared
things
reference,
messing
yeah,
with
which
each
is
other's
totally
data.
terrible in JavaScript. Yeah, totally terrible.
So the difference is, Rust tells you that you're doing something that's going to break your program.
And doesn't compile it.
Right. Whereas in general, most programming languages just,
Just try it out.
maybe this is a bug.
And
Who cares?
And they keep on going until they're sure that something has already gone wrong, in which case they might segfault for you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that meme with Ralph, like, haha, I'm in danger. He's doing nothing.
Exactly.
Which means I'm lost.
You've never seen that meme where,
I
like,
probably have. I just don't
He's on the
remember.
bus. He's in danger.
Yeah, he's in danger. But it also gets to the second point that he was talking about. Sometimes you think you're editing the actual, mutating the actual variable when you're actually mutating a reference of that variable, and you don't realize you're doing it. I guess with Rust, that's not an issue anymore. Because
Yeah.
it is.
If
Is there pass by value and pass by reference? Or?
Mhm.
Yeah, you still have pointers.
This was only supposed to be 5 minutes from my spot.
Yeah, okay, well then it's
Well, I
it's
mean,
done.
this is probably branching out into other people's likeness spots. So.
Yeah.
I still want to go to
Your
school.
show and tell is over, Spencer.
Okay. good. I still want to break the rules.
Okay, I'm gonna do my lightning, my 1 minute lightning.
Yeah, do you want to plug in or you just want to?
No, I just want to talk about it
Just want to see from the heart?
because Will, right? Will's
Yeah.
comment just brought it up. So I read this awesome blog post. I can look up the link and like post it on Discord later if y'all want to read
Discord, please.
it. This awesome blog post that went over why Rust's smooth semantics were better than C++'s specifically. And this guy he teaches C++, and he's just gotten into Rust last fall. So like he's a huge expert in C++. I learned all this stuff about C++ moves, like how C++ 11 that was introduced in 2011 introduced the concept of moves for C++. But like you read the blog post, it's basically like C++ did it sort of this half-done, sort of kind of terrible way, where it's usually better to like implement moving yourself manually for reasons. But one of the really cool like outcomes of this was he's like, and he looked into like the discussions. He went back and actually looked up the discussions of the design for all this to try to figure out like why did they choose this approach? Why didn't they do it like Rust did it? Because Rust has moves where basically your little stack part of your value gets copied somewhere, but then that is your new value, and the heap part that it's referencing that goes along with it. That's what it means under the hood for a value to move. And C++ didn't do it that way, and in C++ you have to write I think it's called a move constructor. Like you have to manually write the code to make a move so it can happen at all.
And an overloaded operator.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, what was the point I was trying to get to?
So the guy was digging out the
Oh,
conversation.
yeah, he was trying to figure out like
Discussion.
why did they do it this like half their way instead of like the way Russ did it, and the outcome of it was he translated it. He basically said, okay, if you're gonna just summarize it today, the outcome was, well, if we did that, we'd have to implement all of Rust. Like basically, we would have to invent a whole ownership system to track ownership everywhere, and that would be really hard. So we're not going to do it. They're just like that's so cool. Like they didn't say that because back then when they were creating that, there was no Rust. But today, with hindsight, reading through the discussion, he's like, oh wow. So what they were saying was they would have had to make the whole Rust ownership system to do the way that Rust does moves. It's like, oh, wow, that's really cool.
Which would have made the move to C11 even bigger, bigger than it
Yeah.
ultimately was.
Yeah, so it's just fascinating. It's interesting to see how, like, the choices you make in your designs, while completely sensible for that day, if you're going to keep compatibility with those choices, are going to keep you in sort of a certain place. Like, C++ can't ever become as ergonomic as Rust without essentially becoming Rust conceptually, right? Maybe a different syntax, but like it has to support all those same core concepts that Rust does, which is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, the when you do like variable equals other variable, typically in C++ it copies that.
Right.
And a move actually,
Even if it's like some massive vector.
right. So it's like if I move this cup or this cup into that, it's like we make a copy of it. There's yours, but this still exists. But what if this has like 50 million entries? You don't want to do that. It just replaces that cup, so that cup no longer exists. It's now this cup, and so this is invalid. So
And in C++, you have to write your code to do your thing, and a big part of that code is going back to the old object and manually marking it as this isn't being used in some way, but then you have to leave it there. Like that's the part that they couldn't do automatically like Rust, is like have the language invalidate it.
You can't remove your stack frame, right?
I don't know
If
how
you're
that comes
calling
into
it a
it or
function,
not.
it's not like you can be like, well, this part of the stack frame.
Well, I
is
mean,
just-
Rust doesn't remove the stack frame.
Yeah,
right?
except they have lifetime. Yeah.
The Rust still has the old, like when you move something, the old stack frame part, the bits are still physically there. If
Yeah,
the
they
move
have to
happened
move
into
the
a
stack, yeah.
function and stuff, and like they'll maybe get popped off later and just thrown away, but like they're still there. But
So
the
they-
language has invalidated it, so at compile time it knows that part of the stack you can never use again.
Yeah.
But in C++, that's what they can't do. They don't have
Well, they would
lifetimes.
have to have.
So they can't invalidate it at compile time, which means something might use it. So all you can do is go back and like user mode mark it as, okay, I shouldn't ever use this again. Like maybe it's a pointer and I change it to null or something or whatever it is, but
And you have to, developers have to be trusted to remember to do
yeah,
that.
and you have to remember to do that, like do that in your move constructor, and you have to remember to never use that thing after it's moved.
You're just begging for some scary bugs.
Yeah,
So you better have good comments on it,
yeah.
And you know, lots of faith. You pray a lot.
And really good coworkers that also do the same thing.
Well,
I'm sure no one has coworkers that don't
Developing
follow
a
the
library.
rules.
Well, it doesn't even take that much, right? There's a context for stuff that's so difficult to
Oh,
convey.
yeah.
Context is like a big thing. I found that speaking to Rust design, there's some things that can feel kind of unergonomic. Usually, they're surrounding something very technically difficult. They're unwilling to obscure something that you may not be thinking about right then that makes it feel unergonomic. But it's underlying something technically difficult. Lifetimes can be a pain, but it's underlying this whole system to be able to not have problems with
Yeah.
that.
Well, and like Will said, the way to implement this move constructor is you overload your assignment operator. So now when you're looking at code, you don't know if that assignment operator is going to be moving something or if it's going to be copying something or what, unless you go look at the implementation of the value.
there's some containers like a unique pointer where you can't copy it, so you have to move it. And the way they accomplish that is by deleting certain destructors or certain constructors. So you can like delete a copy constructor, and if you try to copy it anytime in your code, I mean, you won't be able to. It'd be a compile time error.
Interesting.
I mean, it's just so complex. Like from what you guys described of how Rust does it, sounds way simpler.
Yeah, in Rust you can always tell if it's you just got to know if the type is copy or not. If it has if it implements the copy trait, then in any move situation it'll be copied, and otherwise in any move situation it'll be moved. The end. And like a function call by value is a move situation. An assignment is a move situation.
Or wrap it in arc, then you can have like your cheap clone.
Sure.
That'll work. But you can call out and say this, I want something to implement it. And it's nice
Yeah.
that you can call out in the type system what you want your move semantics to be.
Yep. And you can always tell, like looking at a function signature, whether a parameter is going to be, passed by ownership, which is going to be a move situation, or if it's a reference or a mutable reference. Okay, that was a heck of a long 1 minute. Sorry.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that was
good.
more like a
No, I
5
mean
minute.
we're here just to hang out and chill. These people are showing up without any presentation being scheduled because they love, well, mostly you, but also some of the other people and Spencer.
I have a controversial subject.
Yes,
Oh.
controversy.
Wait, this is a Rust meeting. We're not going to talk about that language here.
I know.
Oh man, you're going to talk about PHP?
Why?
That's not controversial.
If PHP were a kid at recess, like it would be like they would be beat up so bad. Like
be so
it would be
See, it is
so sad.
controversial. Let's not talk about it.
No, so it's funny. One of my friends doesn't like Rust. Right? So,
Oh, gosh.
he's not a believer.
It's a
So-
safe space here.
Yeah. So, but
You're welcome here, Spencer.
But it's funny
okay.
because the reason why is because he knows somebody that they have like they have a company that they have like 200 people and they did Rust and they're having to write all the libraries and they're like this is not working. So
Oh, did
I-
they jump into a rewrite the world project?
I think probably and so everything is right. And so I'm totally for Rust. I think it, but for like let's start building our entire infrastructure on it tomorrow. I'm like, maybe some microservices.
It worked out with Go.
What size company is this?
It's 200 people, and it's like
That's basically Google.
200 developers or 3
Two- like-
developers
it's
and
like
200?
it's like 200 developers, I think. But I don't know. Anyways, so I'm wondering, like is Rust ready for production today in terms of like how many libraries are available compared to other languages, or is it just because I know it's gonna be big?
I have strong opinions. I'll go first.
Yeah,
Do
I
your
wanna-
strong opinions.
I want to chime in too.
Yeah, because I do know that's some of the complaints, and I know that you hate libraries.
Well, also, how does like if I wanted to use like an OpenSSL library as written in C, it's not like I could.
Why would you do that when there's stuff available in Rust?
I'm just
The
using
whole-
it's
no,
a, it's
no.
I can,
No, Rust is that you get safe code.
No,
that
what I'm
doesn't
saying- what I'm
crash,
saying is, how
doesn't
do you-
get viruses.
I
So
can
you
answer
have
that
to-
question,
You have to
AJ.
rewrite that in Rust, then, right?
What?
You have to
We
re-
actually have to use OpenSSL in FIPS mode that we license from a certain vendor for a certain environment that we use at my job.
Why would you do that?
Regulations. It has to be FIPS compliant. There's not a FIPS certified cryptography liar, pure Rust
Why not?
cryptography liar.
Wait, so
library.
Why does it-
you
why
have
is
to
it
make
Rust
a
TLS
foreign
certified?
function interface, right?
Yeah, so you just use just.
So
you use
you have
FFI in Rust to access the C library, and
So we're
you can do
back to
that.
using C.
Well, that's one of the
Okay.
pros of Rust is
How
you
about
can
a
have
syscall?
this zero cost interaction with C. Like, no, it's not zero cost to write it, but to run it,
Right.
So you
it's,
just use it where you need it.
it's this seamless interaction. Because Rust, you can actually mark your Rust structs and things as, okay, I want to lay this out using the C API so that I can pass something to C. And you can use C headers from Rust,
Oh, wow.
and in unsafe blocks you can get stuff from a C library you can call into and receive stuff from. So it's both directions. you can actually compile a Rust library as a C shared object library as well, and actually pretend it is just a C library. So all those different directions, like there is full interaction. And that's something that we do at my work, is in those places where we have to interact with certain C libraries, we don't want to use C anymore. We're sick of using C in our code. So there are certain projects at my work that we're porting over to Rust that were C, using C, and now it's Rust using C.
So what's the application?
GitHub?
Oh,
It's all in Rust now, baby.
Probably.
I was like, oh, you're such a fan. That's cool. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's.
So I understand
Is this
you.
related to your authorization stuff, or is that?
Well, GitHub is sold in 3 different environments.
Yeah.
One's .com, just online, everyone sees, right? That's not the one. There's a GHAE. It's an enterprise hosted in Azure version of GitHub. That one has to be FIPS compliant because it's for government users and like people. They're like, we're going to turn on all the compliance flags. You have to do all the compliance things. So in those environments, we have to use this licensed version of OpenSSL that's FIPS certified.
I love that where it's like, we gotta be compliant. Your password can only be 8 characters long, with only lowercase letters and numbers without spaces.
What you are saying is compliance is orthogonal to security, and that is so true.
Yes.
I would say
I have heard of GitHub though.
You have heard of
I have
GitHub?
heard of
Okay,
it.
that's good.
I don't know all the things.
I feel
but
a job
have
like
heard-
I have job security now.
Yeah.
I mean, to answer the question, is Rust production ready? Yes, obviously there's a rich ecosystem of libraries and people are using it in production. So by that definition, it is production ready. But is it production ready for your company? That's an individual question.
Right.
Because you have to pay the cost to train your team. You have to pay the cost to make sure it's compliant, in a loosely worded term, compliant with whatever your logging stack is, metric stack, and that people can learn from it, deploy with it, feel comfortable with it. That is a completely different definition of production ready, but I think it's up to you and your company. And but in that sense, it's solvable. It's just, is it worth the investment?
Yeah.
Right.
I
That's-
even
yeah.
like I've been writing a lot of Java lately. It's
I'm
fine,
sorry.
honestly.
Solidarity, brother.
It's honestly just not even that bad, right? Like it's gonna be, but what I think where Rust is probably is for most things, probably not. But the awesome thing about Rust is how well you can integrate it into other things. The FFI story is really nice. So let's say that you're doing a Node application. Well, you can compile the WASM really easy, wrap it up in a Node module, decide that we have this hop path. Man, what could we use? Well, we could go figure out C or all these other things. Or Rust FFI story is really, really pretty nice. So you can end up mixing it in, right? It's. I would say if your question is like, oh, let's just full Rust. Probably like a hard pass from a business standpoint. It's just not going to happen. But
Well, and you got to be realistic about your use case.
yeah.
I mean, like, what are you working on? Are
I've
you,
said it a lot of times. Really convenient.
do you have to integrate deeply with this, like, Elixir framework? Maybe you should freaking use Elixir, right? Or something. Or, this is a systems programming language also. Like, are you trying to rapid prototype and you don't know Rust yet? Well, maybe it's not worth going up the learning curve to learn Rust to try to rapid prototype a website, especially like in the web framework stuff. Like Rust is pretty new, and like async's really painful still, not very ergonomic. Like I wouldn't choose Rust as my first choice as a production network service today. I think that'll change in the future, but like today I don't think it's the best choice just because it's not really there yet on the async front. Like it's getting there.
I mean,
It's
it
making
works.
much progress.
It
It works.
works.
You can make it work.
I'd be fine putting an application in production if I'm the only one managing it, but
Right.
there was a pretty steep learning curve to feel comfortable in the async ecosystem and to
Mhm.
understand the unseen warts that exist behind those.
And it's still
APIs.
changing.
And it's still changing and evolving.
But like in other areas, like if you just need like the base language, or you just need like really high performance or really high efficiency, like it's already there.
for a lot of
Yeah.
things. So yeah.
So there's no doubt there for performance or security. I think what I'm just wondering is, are we going to have to write every single weird library that we might need? You know, when
It depends on what your use case is, again, because
You
there's
expect it to be a kind of yes, no matter what.
well, yeah, because you have to write the code. But your Rust is good at what Rust is good at. Rust serves particular niches. So if you're trying to do something that is outside of the niches that Rust fills, then you're going to have to write a lot of those niche libraries, right? If you're in a niche where Rust is already solid, then you're going to have to write fewer of those. So for example, Zig is a super, super early stage language, or maybe not super, super. It's got lots of users and whatnot, but it doesn't have a lot of corporate sponsors yet. But if you look at their crypto packages, they have all the cool crypto packages, just part of the standard library, stuff that Go doesn't have part of the standard library even. So different types of script, and there's some new hash, I think Blake or something like that. Hashes that lots of other languages don't have in their standard library. Zig, super young language, but it has all of this crypto related stuff in the standard library. And you're going to find similar things with Rust, where there's Rust TLS. If you want super secure, modern SSL TLS, you've got it. You don't have to deal with all the vulnerabilities of libSSL and all that stuff. You can go straight to just give me what works. Don't give me the other crap that's going to be vulnerable or that's going to have weird configuration scenarios where somebody can do a downgrade attack or whatever. So it's just going to depend.
that's always the answer. I hate it. Depends.
It's so
Well, it
true.
depends what you want to do.
Well, if you knew what you wanted to do, maybe it wouldn't depend. If you could say, should I use Rust
In
for
this
writing-
situation.
for writing high
That's
performance games? Then Nathan could say, yeah. Let me show you how.
I'm just like
Well,
Alice in
you can
Wonderland.
caveat it with a
I'm
few
like,
other
which
things.
way should I go? And it's like,
What do you
that's
wanna
like,
do?
what do you want to do?
What do you want to
Define production ready, and then once you have a definition.
Well,
can
you need to have a problem to solve, right?
Right.
Like you do that. Talk about that. Our place, we got Rust running where performance was an issue, and now it's not because that code's insanely fast. And
Yay!
it's a small thing, but it needed to be a fast thing, and yeah, we took a little bit of time. A few devs went heads down on it, and it's out there. It's good.
Would we agree? Sorry.
Unfortunately, I don't think the Rust talent pool is broad enough to support a 200 engineer stack or 200 engineer company day one, right? You're not just gonna be able to be like, I want 200 Rust devs in Utah County right now. It's like, it's gonna take some time.
Yeah, well, that's
Well,
not
we've
cool.
got
That's just-
one.
So if you're expecting to be able to hire for that,
Like, we got some people whining about ownership. I don't know if we.
I think some of these are really good selling points for the FFI story because it's easier to sell that. I've had things that have been prototyping where I love that it was in Rust because as I changed things, it was really easy to get it to now it compiles. That's good.
Refactoring or collaborating with large groups, Rust is so nice.
But I've also had times where some misunderstanding with async Rust has been a hard blocker. Absolutely couldn't get around it. Had to leave the project. Stop working on something for 2 weeks. Come back. Okay, how did this work again?
Well, why is async that important?
A lot of community libraries in async land.
Well, it depends on your work use case. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of waiting for other things over the network,
Then you need
then
async.
async makes sense.
Welcome to the age of the internet. That's
Right.
a lot of use cases
Mhm.
these days. So it's that I think with that Rust FFI you get to kind of say, well, okay, we'll use it for these things. If we hit a blocker, escape, write that little part of Node or something, and then call back into Rust again afterwards. I feel like there's something to be said about being able to make something.
Yeah, the roadmap for async looks really good, and they just announced the focuses for the 2024 edition, and I don't know, a good third of the things in that list apply to improving async. So that's good. But if you go to the async roadmap and you compare the roadmap of what they need to do to make it ergonomic to what's in the Rust 2024 edition, you're like, oh, okay, they got another like 75% of what they want to do to make this ergonomic to go. So
you're
maybe
saying
2027 edition.
You're saying they're doing 25% of the roadmap in one edition? That's pretty good.
It's
man.
pretty dang good. It's just like, don't expect it tomorrow. Like,
How-
it's
how is it-
hard.
How is async implemented? Is that like a single threaded thing or?
You can be if you
You
want.
got 2 hours?
As a matter of fact,
Well,
I didn't-
Wait, 5 minutes.
good. Someone explain it to me.
Some of that's easy. The executor does use threads.
You're 5
I mean,
minutes
can
up.
you control it? Can you say,
Well,
I
the
just
biggest
want
difference is
Both WASM and FFI, if you want stuff from other languages, there's usually some way to get over to
Right.
some other language and use it.
I will say, John, Everprint runs his last name, Jinx, the one who did Rush
Oh, yeah,
versus-
Jinx it,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, he did an updated async, like 2.5 hour YouTube video that is really good, and he calls out a number of edge cases.
Oh, is that recent?
It's like 2 months old, I think. It's really good.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's cool. Cool. Are we ready to move on to the next topic?
I've got one. I can show
What you
you.
got?
But not controversial.
I need to plug in.
We need to
How do I
relax.
connect to a thing?
Yeah, come connect over here. Plug in right there.
Is there anything?
And then apparently we lost the audio. I'm trying to figure that one out.
It's okay.
What do you need, dumb boys?
Hmm?
Adapter wise?
Looks like this one right here.
Okay, cool.
It's pretty simple.
My computer won't connect though. Wi-Fi test here. What was that? It like full on, it doesn't even try to connect. It was like, no. I'm like,
Well,
what do you mean? At least like try, come on.
Usually any type of drink that like spits out hot beverages, you have to do
Well,
that.
yeah, so I plug it in there, it's like awful, you know. What do I do without the internet?
What happened to that large battery you were letting us
I left it.
So we should be able to see it. I don't see
in a
it.
hurry.
So try just unplugging and
my
replugging,
favorite
you know,
battery.
6 or 7 times. Shouldn't be a big deal. It's only going through 4 different HDMI devices, so should work perfectly. Shouldn't have any auto negotiation errors because HDMI is a great specification.
And that is why there's this sign here that says "Don't panic." Shouldn't that be comforting?
It is oddly comforting. Makes me want to grab a towel.
It's even in large friendly letters.
Oh.
So yeah, see if your computer recognizes it.
I like that.
If your computer.
This
Oh, I
conference
think
room has a
that's funny.
unique
I think
TV
it
setup.
opened
That
up
means
on
It's
the
special.
other screen.
Well, that's weird because I should be seeing it here. Let me just double check.
we need to have AJ. We need to have like a cartoon like that we play during this time when we're like getting the HDMI like over the YouTube.
Could you
Like,
just find the
There'll be a
cartoon?
lot of
Because seriously, I can just make it autoplay. It's not a big deal.
It's just like in the recording, but like
We should
some
play
random
the guts
cartoon.
theme.
Like
I could
a Bugs
start
Bunny.
telling bad jokes again. I mean, that's what we usually do when everything breaks down in the no group. but-
The,
Yeah, so
Find the Bugs
here,
Bunny cartoon.
let's unplug it
You
and
better give me
replug
a
it
whole
here.
lot
It
of
is.
them. There you go.
So let's try that. I mean, it's all about plugging it in the right order. Oh, this says that something was just connected.
Great.
That's a good sign.
It's saying it over and over and over and over and over again.
I'm sure that's a good sign.
It's a sign,
Let's see.
that's for sure.
Yeah,
well,
can we
Mirroring.
turn the TVs back on? Does anybody know how to work the panel?
Alexa, turn on TV.
We'll just,
No, it doesn't work like that.
do you think?
Oh,
this is
I-
dead? Do you think we
I
could call and get some
unplugged
IT people in here?
oh, Will unplugged it.
Let's get some of those
that would make
computer
sense.
My
people.
bad.
Yeah, is there anyone here that's good with computers? I'm not.
Don't even troll me. I hate that so much.
Have you tried turning it off and on?
Trying to have pleasant conversation and then someone has to say, "Oh, my printer's not working. You're a programmer."
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it on and off again?
I had a boss come up to me. He was like, "So, Will, you know programming, but you don't know crap about computers?" Because like I couldn't fix all their Windows stuff.
Oh, they're Windows printers.
Yeah, I was like, what? I was like, it's 2 different.
like, because I haven't been on
So
this.
what I'm
since,
getting
like,
is an error that says
the
invalid
90s.
format, which would mean that it's not doing 1080p 30.
It's looks like it's
Come on, Discord, do some doing.
display settings.
Oh, it's downloading.
Okay, so
Yeah, I can do.
Now I've got no signal.
So,
are you trying to go through this?
Now I've got invalid flight.
Uh-huh.
right?
Because there's a present option
So
on
they-
this, which
yeah,
will
yeah.
get whatever.
GitHub,
Oh,
do they-
actually, it just said
is there-
stop presenting, so that means
are
it's
they
trying to
trying to
present
be
something. The next question
platform
is whether or
agnostic?
not
In what sense?
We're just kind of like,
need
you can be Windows or Mac. It's not like you get extra.
For
I just changed it to
developers
50
restrictions?
hertz. It was at 120 hertz.
No, don't put it at 50.
They're moving that
Put it at
direction.
It's 50, 60, or
Until
120.
Microsoft
60.
acquisition, it was Mac
Yeah,
OS
don't put it at weird
was
things
the
that nothing
primary,
supports.
and then
'Cause
you could
This
opt
obviously
out.
won't.
and use desktop,
Hey-o!
but you'd have to set up.
All right, so now if that
And
box,
then after the acquisition, there
if
are
that
also
box
people
will
with
start working, then
Windows
we'll get it on the
workstations.
TV here.
And we're moving most of our
Because
development to code
the
spaces.
people online
Oh,
can
yeah.
see your screen now.
Code spaces. So, and that makes it less of a problem to
Although
do
it's got
different
some weird
development.
overscan
Yeah.
stuff going on, like a VCR from the.
Yeah, code space. I did one of the first code spaces.
I'll
Like,
go 60.
I opted, yeah, I opted in.
Yeah,
And
you
I
need to go
did the,
60 hertz. Straight up,
I remember I did a
standard, normal,
push,
everyday
and it, like,
frame
ran
rate.
It was at
for the
1.
day
You think
after
this on
because it was
for
off
120.
UTC time.
No, it did not.
And so it was funny.
Yeah.
No, it did not.
My team has 3 people on it.
Okay, it's still doing some funky stuff.
Let me
but-
see.
Okay.
It's Mac.
Well, you don't see anything now.
Windows.
Uh-oh.
Well, good, you're covered.
We just to be like
That's
every
fine.
other team
Yeah,
is
no,
like
it's working good
just
now.
gonna be text.
It's working good.
almost like
There's only 5 people on my team at GitHub, and we have all 3.
Yeah. It's like
Cool beans,
of course,
cool beans.
but 3 of us in a row.
But I mean, 3 of my 5 transferred from Microsoft. So.
But can you imagine doing that 15 years ago or something
Oh,
like how would
I
that
did
even?
it was a nightmare. You,
It was a nightmare?
you try not to.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, 'cause it was just like
We're good.
impossible.
Wait, that's my other
Yeah, it was-
monitor.
It was bad. It's not as bad nowadays. I mean, with Windows subsystem for Linux, that helps a ton in the Windows story.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is a problem.
Docker on
because,
Windows is way
That's
nicer
not-
than Docker on Mac.
Yeah,
Oh,
Docker
it's
on
one
Mac's one of
screen
the
in the
biggest pain
you
points
got a
for
split
Mac
screen.
that we have.
Well, this is
Actually,
right on-
I ran
yeah.
my Docker inside
That's
of
not
Linux
right.
VM on
It
Mac.
says 820.
Oh, yeah?
It ran faster because of the IOs.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's so crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like 2 levels of
Like, how
difference.
could it be faster?
Yeah, I don't know.
So this,
All my
whatever
coworkers
you're
ran
outputting-
Docker
are
on
you-
Mac OS and it was just
fight
miserable
Zoom.
for
But
them.
this is supposed to
Some
be
of the
straight
low-level
password.
Mac stuff,
Okay.
they just don't give
That is
tablets
it's possible.
8 o'clock,
interfaces
and my
they need
current time is
to do what they
8:02.
need.
My guess is what that means
I
is that
mean,
it grabbed a frame. And then that frame
I've heard
froze.
that the OS is pretty secure, so I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, that's the flip side. Is
Yeah.
Cortana.
I've
One
never
day we're
had
going to
a
have
virus.
this great digital
Right.
protocol that's going to have digital rights management so that
Never had
fused
malware.
devices work as possible, but we'll know which vendor to buy it all from.
Why will my phone not connect to Discord?
Okay, everything looks good. Everything's working now.
Okay, so I had a number of flights I was on, and I wanted a good challenge, and I thought, let's write a library in Rust. So this is a port of Sidekick. Does anyone use Ruby or Sidekick or Ruby on Rails? Anything?
Ruby,
I
used
What is it?
Ruby
Yeah.
on Rails.
It's a worker library. That's about it. So
Okay.
I need to kick off some job. I need to call some job.
Oh,
Do
okay.
some jobs.
So it's
It crashed,
like
needs to
rescue
retry.
jobs.
Yeah, it's like rescue.
Rescue is the name of Ruby on Rails workers, like background job
In
workers.
fact, I'm pretty sure you guys created rescue. That's right.
It's very possible.
Pretty sure that's the case.
GitHub is a huge driver of Rails right now.
So Sidekick targets Redis as its store, and yes, if your store gets restarted, then you're pretty much screwed. But the idea is a message bus or a message queue should be pretty quick, and even so, Sidekick tolerates backlog just fine. You're just bound to
celery.
It's like celery. So if you know celery, there's a bunch of them. I wrote this little example. This is what a worker in Ruby would look like. So if you have some like payment report worker, you can call this from anywhere in your code. This will enqueue it into Redis. So this would be like your client or Ruby on Rails app or whatever. And then later it's you start a Sidekick process. It sees that there's some class. I guess this would actually say include Sidekick worker, something like that. So when it's included, it says, hey, register this as available for processing work built into the library. That's it. So super simple, and Sidekick is a really, really good, very stable library. We use it at MX, and it does thousands of jobs a second. No problem. I wanted to port this.
The original one or your version is used there?
Sidekick, the
So,
one.
The original.
The Ruby one, yeah.
Okay,
So we're
okay.
we're primarily a Ruby on Rails shop.
Okay.
There are some things I wanted to try though. One, I wanted to port this to Rust. I wanted to make it async because in a lot of cases you end up doing something like call a database or send a push notification. In which case you spend a lot of time just waiting on the wire, and that would be really nice to have an async runtime for that. So this is a particular case where it may be beneficial to have async over just a threaded runtime.
And just to be clear, you're using fixed width Comic Sans in your editor.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think it's called like Comic Mono or something. I don't know. My eyes are not as good, and I'm too proud to go to the eye doctor or something like that.
Oh, you should totally do that.
Oh, I have that problem too.
No, actually, my glasses got too bad, so I have to go back.
I went to the DMV and had a come to Jesus moment. It was not good.
They're like, we will not pass you. Go to the eye doctor and come get in the back of the 8-hour line.
Baptized by bureaucracy. Got it.
Pretty much.
Go directly to iDoc.
Anyways, the other thing I thought was interesting here is with Ruby, there's no types; it's all dynamically typed. And I thought, man, it'd be really cool if I could say, look, this is the type of data that I'm expecting, and have a library enforce that those things are happening. So this is kind of what I ended up with. You can define some whatever struct you want. I called it payment report worker to basically mimic this Ruby one. And then I say, hey, this worker is going to take some user GUID that I'll use to go do stuff later. And then this is how I implement that worker. And it's just a worker trait that is part of this Sidekick Rust library. And it takes a type parameter, which is your argument, and then you import that argument, and then you return some result. So this is kind of what it would look like. And then if you wanted to call this in Ruby, you have this perform async. This took a while to get right, but the trait will implement this perform async method for you, and including like a stringified version of this particular worker object. So it'll basically be compatible with Ruby out of the box.
Is that a lambda that returns a templated result type?
Which one?
30? That one?
This is kind of like your very basic return a result, which is basically nothing, or return any error.
Results in enum. Are you familiar with Rust's enums?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Are you familiar with Haskell's algebraic data types?
So basically, if people who are
Yes.
paying attention would say this is
You
wrong,
can
I need to
explain it.
return okay with nothing. So that was really fun. The other really powerful feature that a pattern you see a lot in Ruby is the concept of a middleware. So something like an HTTP stack may have a middleware that says, I will inject you as the request is coming in. So I process a request. There's layer of middlewares that are processed. One of those might be check if the request is authorized correctly. If it is, great. Otherwise, say it's unauthorized and halt the request from being processed.
These are like interceptors.
I don't know what the pattern would be called in other things, but
It's common in Node.js and Express.
yeah. So Express, you see it all the time.
Yeah, middleware could intercept something and say like, no, you're not authorized. You can't go any further down the
Okay.
stack. We're not actually going to fulfill.
In
this
Java
request."
land, they call it interceptors. In
Oh,
Node, it's
great.
very
Okay.
common to call
Okay.
it.
I'm
Yeah.
not-
Yeah, so it's
But
like
they're the same thing.
one
Middleware interceptors.
you end up making this chain of classes or code that calls one another, and then eventually there's one that actually like processes the request, and then maybe at this end there's one that's turning the bytes and writing it back to the HTTP client or the HTTP socket. Or on the way back, you might say, hey, let the framework, I'll have some framework specific middlewares or library specific middlewares that will catch some exception, and then I will turn that into a really nice response. So this typically it's defined this way. I think Sidekick, I don't actually have internet. I couldn't figure out the thing, so this is what I remember it looking like. How you'd implement this in Sidekick. It's essentially a few arguments that are called, like the next, job, worker, Redis, and you may want to do some business logic that says, hey, if this is an expired user, then don't allow them to get that push notification to let them in the app, or don't enable that upgraded feature, or don't send the newsletter to them. This is what it might look like. If you're thinking, this looks like, why am I spending so much time on this? It's because if you're thinking about this, how this is implemented, it's let's just initiate a bunch of classes and then, hey, here's a reference to this particular object and just pass it in. But if you think about that in a Rust memory model, it kind of falls on its face because now you have many references everywhere. And so doing a middleware is actually pretty challenging to get right. But this is what it looks like when I implement it in Rust. It's this middleware struct again, and this is what the implementation would look like for that same thing. Reject it if it is expired, and right now it just has this particular user GUID for no particular reason. But this is what I ended up with. It's very similar. It has this chain instead of next. It has a job. It has a reference to the worker, and it has that Redis connection pool. I really like this because with Surdy, you can take this kind of basic blob, just this JSON value, and you can actually attempt to decode it into something that you think might be there. And so if you actually think about this RubyWare middleware written in Ruby, I kind of take the job.args, but this could be anything, any hash or whatever, and you can kind of in the Ruby world.
Could crash right there.
Yeah, it could crash right here, or this you can say, hey, check if this is nil. If not, check if it's a hash. If it's a hash, then check if it has an argument. If it's an array, check the first argument. You can get really creative with how you interact with the runtime. But you can't really do that in Rust unless you use Surdy with a specific type and say, hey, try to deserialize into this form. And if it works, then give me the value. And if it doesn't, then hey, I know that this is either a problem or just continue down the chain, right? Because typically middlewares are something that wrap the entire server process, not just one particular worker.
So could you define middleware? We do have a few people online that are less experienced.
So the middleware would be kind of like this. It's something that you would put into your request stack or into your worker stack, where the library will say, hey, I got something, and then you can give that library pieces of code to insert as that job is being processed. So one may say like, hey, here's this job. You can check like this. Hey, is there a user associated with this job that's expired? If so, don't let the job be processed, right? Or let it continue. The user's not expired. Next, go check out a database connection. And if the user needs to connect to a different database, then do that here. And then it can say, go like, exception handling. I don't know. So it's a way of kind of extending the library with user contributed data. Anyone have a better definition?
Would you say it's like a decider or something? I don't know.
I can
So
give a
somebody-
quick example.
I may have actually misread the question, I think I did, but somebody else said, it's called middleware because it's the operation that happened between,
Yeah.
meaning in the middle of the initial request and the final response.
Yep.
Oh, I like
Yeah, exactly. It's really common in like web servers.
process.
Super common in web servers.
Super,
You'll
yeah.
have a framework where you can say like, well, if they're going to this page, run this function. If they're going to that page, run this other function. But if they go to any page, before you go run those functions, run this middleware.
Yeah, and the middleware may say, make sure that user has a session and hasn't expired.
Right.
Or maybe
Are they logged in?
Yeah.
Are they authorized?
this is the admin section. Is this user authorized to hit the admin section? They are. Okay, great. Continue. So you can bake some extra logic into that dispatching part. But whoever said that definition, that's very concise and much better than I could think of in a
It
panic
was
state.
Soulbum49.
Thanks, some.
Who's
Soulbum.
Do we know them?
I don't know.
So I realize-
It's hard to tell with people's usernames.
I realized like knowing Sidekick and knowing middleware would certainly help this, and I didn't really prepare for that. But I did want to call out, at least in this implementation, Surdy is pretty cool because you can kind of replicate some of that dynamic metaprogramming of, well, what type is this? Let me do something with it. You can get pretty close there, and this is just a re-implementation of if the user is expired, then prevent the job from being processed. Otherwise, call the chain down the line.
So is chain iter and like are some of these types from the Sidekick Rust library?
Yeah, so this works. This is from my implementation of this, and you can.
So
can-
you wrote a Sidekick Rust library?
Yes,
Awesome.
it's here. You can go look at it.
Okay, so this is your project.
Yeah,
Cool.
He wrote it on some flights.
yeah,
You can write code without internet. How do you do
it's a fun challenge.
Yeah, wait, seriously though.
My last challenge was like in Rust, how do I change the process name?
Ooh.
And I'm like grepping through system library on here, and it's like I know how to do this in Linux, but I don't know how to
Well,
do this.
it's platform specific, so
Yep.
they haven't exposed a generic.
There's actually a good crate for it,
Is that right?
but
There's some.
Can you download
new-
all the documentation?
There's some
Yeah.
new Electron app
fact,
thing that has
all there.
documentation for all the
By
programming
default.
languages. Does anybody remember what that one's called?
Oh, I remember
DevDocs, or is it
I
a
remember
different one? DevDoc or DevDocs?
That might be it. But
You
it's,
can
it's
actually
an
do,
Electron app, and it has playgrounds, and it has documentation for a bunch of different popular languages.
You could do,
This sounds better than DevDocs.
You could do cargo doc -- all,
Yeah.
and it will do everything. And so you can actually just do open up your docs and, Shift S to search through it, and you can change your crate to everything. And then
I
this
don't
Rust stuff
think
has
you-
the standard library.
Yeah, I think the dash all is meant to be, that's actually a deprecated.
Oh yeah, I
It's
guess
for
you
the
don't need it.
workspace, right? But you'll get all of the packages you consume if you just have the one crate in your workspace.
Totally.
You just cargo dock and it'll get you all there.
Yep. But anyways, to make this work, I had to use more arcs than I cared to, and everything is it's just immutable references. You can't do mutable references in here, which is how you get around the preventing things from doing expensive copies. But you have to do some also creative things like, well, how do you implement this chain? And it's anyway, you can go read the code if you care about that. It was really interesting. It took me a while to get it written, but it works. So here's disconnected for whatever reason, but
Okay, we now have an official async expert that we can ask all our async questions to.
But anyways, the library's on GitHub. Sidekick Rust. There's like Sidekick and Sidekick RS were taken on Cargo.
Seriously?
Or on, yeah. So I ended up calling mine Rusty Sidekick, which I thought was clever.
Like it.
Trusty Sidekick.
Oh, do you know what tag union is in C?
Oh, is that like tag pointers?
No,
No?
I don't think so.
When you really start
I guess.
desperate for the Ferris.
I could find that. Well, that's what emails is.
Ferris
Tag unions.
That's
The
awesome.
Rusty names can hold value as well.
Should we go over what an enum is real quick for?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Do you want to plug in? It'll only take 10 or 20 minutes.
Sure.
As far as
Go over what?
Oh yeah, I don't have an HDMI. plug.
Enums.
Oh, you don't need those.
This one's got USB-C.
Yeah, yeah.
All
sure.
right.
I'm sure
Yeah.
that'll work.
See, now this is a presentation I can give.
Well, like literally, if you give.
I'm a bit of a, I honestly, I don't know anything about Rust really.
Let's just give-
I mean, some of the concepts everybody's bringing up, it sounds familiar because of C++.
Enums and rest are cool.
Enums are, enums in C are just numbers, but enums in Rust are types. So you're basically able to match or switch over. There's a superset of types, so it could be an integer or a string or a first name,
You're gonna have to walk the word. 'Cause
and you can match on which type it is.
That almost kind of sounds how like Erlang does pattern matching.
Yes. It is
Just
functional. It is functional pattern matching.
Okay, I gotta go. Thanks, everyone.
Well,
Sure.
Spencer?
it's cool because they can contain
Wait,
value.
where's your battery today?
Oh, wow.
So you can say like, oh,
I had
if I
come in a
have this
hurry.
enum, then it's actually going to contain an int and a string. But actually, if it's this enum value,
Did it work?
It'll
Not yet.
contain some other
Crazy.
Let's just I've got it already up here.
Yeah, that's
Let's just
probably nice.
unplug and replug the TV.
We have to, like,
Hmm?
when I did,
So you, what,
Or
you
even
can see my
got a
screen? Is
PowerPoint.
it mirrored or?
Nice.
Yeah,
On your
everybody
Rusty
online
side.
can see your screen.
Did you consider like
Okay,
Um,
I wanna do,
I guess it seems like it's a function chain.
Okay.
they changed all the
Right?
try this again.
display settings.
But I guess
Can we just can we force it to
That's
go
not
back?
on
Composed.
anymore, I don't know. What?
Okay, so now that
registering.
this one says the room display is unplugged.
Yeah, which is weird, because somehow, I mean,
call it next.
like, it's clearly getting Teams input from somewhere.
Because we can't.
It's only 8 o'clock.
Well, let me unplug this one. Oh, now it's gone from there.
Wait, so it's.
You broke it. What'd you do, man?
Just adding that on top of it.
I hate HDMI
Well,
so
so-
much.
So let's go.
You know, you
Just
can
see a
blame it
flow,
on the
really
solar
flow
storm
instead.
that's supposed to hit us today.
So if I go here.
We need to come
Ooh.
better system that's using.
How do you observe a
all
solar
the way
storm?
through.
That sounds crazy.
So they have a
It would work.
they have a device. I don't know what
The,
it is.
the
satellite
problem
that
is
just
the
faces out
the
sun.
copyright protection.
It just-
That's
Anything?
the problem.
and it's,
Yeah, it's up here. I don't know why it's not up there. Let's just try unplug it all or replug it all.
So it's supposed to hit us today, and they said that it's supposed to mess with the satellites and might
My screen's
have
blinking.
blackouts.
And here.
Is that like a solar flare or is that something
I
different?
think.
Copies those.
I don't know.
Dang.
So you basically.
Honestly, I have no idea.
I don't know much about
Cloning your
space.
See, this is why you don't use Linux. Then you get issues like this.
I'm not on Linux.
I'm
That's
hoping
the joke.
That's the joke here.
No, it's
I clone that.
we use Linux
I'm at
for work,
index
but
zero,
it's kind
now
of
I'm
crazy.
index
Yeah,
one.
you connecting a display
And
used to
then I
be
call whatever
super
was
hard on
there,
Linux.
you know,
There's a
what's
whole
there,
fiasco.
with my
Now it's
plug
much
in
more
all
reliable on my Linux
So
machine than
so
it is
the
on
arrays never.
Really?
I mean, you can make it difficult by installing Gentoo.
Okay, so for your computer,
Wow.
we have to plug
You-
this
it's a
one in
picture
first.
on
and
your
this
phone.
one.
I did Gentoo for 8
So
years.
the power
2003,
here was
2011.
like just in my
Right,
ear.
and then
I
I-
pushed it
Well,
on the
back
light and
then,
light came on.
It
So I
was
think
hard to
I
get
think this
things
is what
built
power
that
like
weren't
mine.
already packaged for any other distro.
So just pick a distro where you have to put everything.
And
Exactly. It was actually easier, yeah.
Because
All right.
To get
try to
everything.
increment it or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's great.
I can't mutate it.
I already have enough configuring with devs on, but
Wow, you weren't kidding. This is just
What I do
not
is
coming up.
I have,
So now you might need to unplug and plug in now that everything
Me?
is. Well, I don't know. Someone somewhere.
I'll try it.
I have known.
Mhm.
And then
We've already done everything
clone
else, so
that
why not
and
this
do
one?
index zero.
Well, so he
Index zero
rebooted
is
it.
is the basic
Yeah,
one.
the power strip was only like partially plugged in, so it looks like at some point, and that's why this wasn't lighting up. So-
Alright, so we've got you
Self-button
here.
index, and I was called-
Last time I was here, I heard the power strip made quite a fireworks show.
Cortana.
different
queries.
Work.
And I press OK.
Yeah, that was
Unplugging
What
and
I'm trying to shoot
replugging.
also is back to the demo.
Why did you do the asynchronous?
Cortana.
I think we had this problem with your computer specifically last time.
Mine?
Wasn't it your? I don't know.
I don't recall having a problem.
Gotcha, you don't really care.
Presenting.
I was more thinking of it in the
I've
While we're
presented
getting
for a
that-
while.
documentation and stuff.
While we're getting this all squared away, you know how every language has its niche, right?
Before you
So what do you
move on
think?
down
What's the
chain.
Rust
Yeah,
niche?
you know,
Well,
like,
it's interesting.
getting
It's
somewhere says
solidly
this is blocking
systems
my
programming and wherever you can use WebAssembly.
It went back to
Yeah.
that.
So it's a really interesting. It's like it straddles. It's like
Will you
it's all the way
make
at the
sure
bottom
you're doing
and it's in weird
1080p?
places.
Hey, will you make sure you're doing 1080p on that?
I can sure try. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure it's 1080p 60 or 1080p 30.
Does,
Okay.
does
The display dialogue is on the screen. I can't see.
Oh, okay. Well, I can help you a little bit with that. That's quite the problem.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe you have
There we
3
go.
displays. I know.
Give it back to me. There we go. Got it. Okay, so display settings.
How do you know which
does Russ's
SCV is
LLVM?
scale.
Did they do
It's on 1080p.
Okay.
All right, 1080p 30, and then make sure you're mirroring.
It doesn't tell me the refresher, just 1080p. Oh, wait, yes, it does. 1080p 60.
Good.
Okay.
Normal refresh rate. And then if you will just make sure that all of the displays are mirroring, and it's not trying to put out to 2 or 3
Oh,
displays.
you don't want me to mirror, huh? Or you want me to mirror?
I think I want you to mirror because I think that this doesn't work otherwise. Am I
So
right?
Christian,
Well, I mean, I can see over
you do
here.
Java, right?
Yes, I'm a
Great.
Java
Now I
guy.
mixed it up again.
How has
Lost access to the thing again.
Yeah, so I don't
Spectre
understand. So
and all those CPU attacks
If the
affected?
TV is not
'Cause,
picking
like,
you up,
That's core to Java, right? The
give it 10
chip.
seconds. And
You
it
mean
will
like the log
switch. See, now
J4?
it's switching.
Is that what we're talking
No,
about?
no, no.
But it's gone black.
Like
I
the
don't
CPU
understand
attacks
what
that.
that.
Aha!
Yay!
We got something.
Math prediction.
Okay.
All right. Ooh, a new record. Less
It's
than 20
honestly my
minutes.
first time hearing about it.
All right. Well,
So there's
to try? And
people found CPU vulnerabilities.
let's try this.
not gonna lie.
That is native
Aha!
to all.
All right. If I can get your attention again.
Yeah,
Whoa.
we'll talk about it soon.
That is orange.
Explained.
Is that that's a Star
Okay,
Wars
whatever.
color?
Whatever.
That's a Star Wars color.
Yeah,
Isn't
no,
It's
that's-
orange on my screen.
That's a different orange than I know.
Whatever. It works good enough. Okay, so enums, right?
It's the dollars to donuts. It's the HDCP driver on that computer is different than the one on this computer or that computer.
We're both Macs, man.
But it's the HDCP that's in the GPU. Just works.
Oh yeah, you're
It's a different
on an
version.
Apple Silicon. I'm on an old Intel. That's the problem.
Well, and this is the 2015, which would just work. That's probably HDMI 1.4 or 1.5 as opposed to the
Whatever. It's
HDMI
working.
1.6.
Okay, so we're just going over enums. Okay, so an enum's like an algebraic data type in Haskell. It's a lot more like that than it is like a C like enum. And this is how it looks, right? You go enum, and then the name of your enum, and then your variants is what they're called. Like this, it actually is like a C like enum. Like okay, so enum.
That's actually
The name of
valid
it.
C without. The,
Yeah, it looks just like C so far, right? So if we stop right here, it is like C, and it works like C. Like it actually assigns them integers, or actually, and it works fine. And you can actually use this form to interoperate with C over FFI.
Oh, nice.
So it matches exactly. But then like it can also, here's the syntax of like using it. You use the name of the enum, and then : is your scope operator, and then whichever variant you want. So that's like, I'm going to set this variable to that enum value. So you can always just have that empty enum variant, which is a lot like a C variant. It has no data associated with it. You can just tell it's an empty, right? So here we got an enum dispenser item. So I was thinking like Team Fortress 2 dispenser, something like that. Or you could get like ammo out of it, and it has like some amount of ammo. So a U8 is your byte, right? And here, this variant has a type associated with it. It's saying, okay, I contain one U8 value in this variant.
You went 8_T and C.
Yeah.
C++.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or you could do a tuple of data. So I'm going to have a string and a number, and this is a signed 32-bit integer. Or I'm going to do a whole struct.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to actually have named fields with types and everything. Like you can have all of that in an enum. And like a C tagged union, you can be any one of these things, but only one at a time. So you can be one of those values.
Right, okay.
Right? So you could say, okay. Also, you can bring things into scope, so you don't have to go dispenser item : every time you type it. So if I do this use statement, that'll bring empty ammo things in place into scope. So I can just say empty. Stuff like that. So here I'm just making a variable, and it's an empty. And so I sort of go through all that. Well, I can make a variable with a 42 in it. I can make a things that has this string and that number, or I can make a place with these X and Ys. Like that's all this, like just sort of examples of using an enum or creating enum. One of the cool things, another cool thing that like C doesn't do, is you can associate methods and functions with your enum. So here I'm saying, okay, well, a variable that's typed dispenser item now has a display method. And then I could put my implementation there, and now it's curly braces, and like do whatever I want whenever I call .display on a variable that is this enum. And let's see, and this is what we're getting into. There's some really common enums in the standard library that you use all the time, option and result. So here's option, and whenever you're reaching for a null in a C-like language, you want to use an option in Rust, because you can't have null pointers in Rust. So instead you can have an option. So it's either a none or it's a sum variant that contains something. Now this is also using generics. So that angle bracket T says some type, I'm just going to call it T, and it has no bounds. So it can be literally any type. So this enum works with any type inside of it.
So you're parameterizing the type.
Exactly. So then I just go through that explanation. You don't have to name it T. It's an arbitrary identifier, but the convention is you just sort of use T or U or something like that. So that's what you'll see most often.
Why U?
Because it comes after T.
Oh, okay.
Like if you have multiple, if you just have two, it'll often be TU.
Oh, I got it.
It's really common in Java for TUV, right?
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah. Yep.
Can I ask a completely unrelated question? Does anyone
Sure.
else's brain trying to find the difference between the two monitors? Because I'm looking at them like, okay, but I know they're the same code, but I'm used to looking at a diff file.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
Should we hang
but
a
they're
curtain
the same
over
code
one of the
stuff.
monitors?
Yeah, I'm like literally
One eye.
telling my brain, no, it's the same code. It doesn't, you don't need to find the
Have you
difference.
found the 10 differences? Start circling them.
I think that's just you.
It's just
No, it happens to me all the time if I'm ever presenting and I'm looking at the monitor while I'm presenting. Oh.
All right, so let's see. So because enums can represent all sorts of data, you need to use patterns to examine them. So patterns are like the other side of enums. To use them, you've got to use patterns. So you've got to understand at least a little bit about patterns. The easiest thing to say about patterns is they look just like, you can use something that looks just like the variant and just put a variable in the location where you would have a variable.
This is like assigning a new variable within an if.
Yeah, so here, if-let, so if-let goes together. This is an if-let statement. And what it does is it takes a pattern on this side, and if it matches your value over on this side, then it will go through this and say like, okay, where are your variables. Oh, you want an X local variable for whatever's inside the sum. So if you have the sum and it contains any value, it's going to make a local variable X for this scope, and then you've got it. Whatever was in the sum is your X over here. So that's how you use things. You use it in places where you use patterns.
So you said it was local, so only within the brackets is the variable
Yes.
applicable.
Yeah, after that curly brace, X is going.
Okay.
Yep.
And if this is the non-variant, then the entire if statement would not run.
Right. So it's looking at an option, which is only some or none. So if it was none, this wouldn't match. That would make this false. It would just skip it. Yeah. Well, but like, what if you didn't want to skip it, right? Well, that's where match comes in.
I was gonna say it's like it's just a single.
Yeah, actually, if let is syntactic sugar for a match. I believe it's literally syntactic sugar where it replaces it with a match statement with the other branches just as a default. Does nothing.
Could you reverse that so the sum is on the right and the my variable is on the left?
No, that's the
That'll break.
syntax.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of weird. Like it's a little mind bending at first because I wanted the same thing. I'm like, why can't I put my variable
I'm
over
so
here?
used to the variable being the name being so.
But for whatever reason, they made that choice. But on match, the syntax is a lot more normal because it's match my variable, and then you put your patterns.
Oh, is this like a switch?
This is just like a switch, only more powerful. It takes patterns instead of only
Values.
And it can
values.
be
Yeah.
an expression.
It's an expression.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and it's an expression, which is just awesome. So here we're doing our sum, and then
Why'd you tell me about
there's
Rust,
our
dude?
arm. Were you holding back on Will? Did you just barely tell him about
Why'd
Rust?
you tell me about
What kind
Rust?
of
This is amazing.
friend are you, AJ?
You're here, aren't you?
Okay, so anyway,
You've got a fun weekend ahead.
You're not a very good stalker if you didn't hear about Rust.
here's your wildcard syntax. If you put an underscore, that's a pattern that matches anything. Where'd my cursor go?
So if it's not a null, then that's the wild card.
If it's not a sum, then it will hit this wildcard. Yes.
Wait, so what's the difference between the last slide and that? It's the same or is it
Essentially
equivalent?
nothing.
Okay.
I'm just demonstrating like this is a wild card. In this particular case, there only was a none, but if there were more variants, this would catch them all.
Well, an important thing about matches is they're exhaustive. So if you had, this is for the option which only has 2 variants, but if let's say that you had an enum that had 10 variants, you need to list every variant as part of the match statement. Unless you have this underscore, which means I acknowledge there are other variants, match anything for this
Yeah,
case.
wildcard.
Okay.
Could you have a none and an underscore?
Sure.
Okay.
And it goes in order.
Okay.
So like if you could put like whatever you want, and you put a wildcard at top, it'll never reach anything else.
Okay.
Oh, so you don't need the return statement. It just
No. They didn't make the mistake Java has, which is you have to break
Oh, I'm so sorry.
afterwards on fall through.
Yeah,
like,
you
by
don't have to
default.
break.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You don't have to break.
JavaScript does that too. Yeah, you have to use break.
So let's see.
Things all still
Wait, so you can't do return? It like enforces a break?
I'm
No,
not
you
sure.
can return in a match.
Oh.
Pretty sure you
Well,
can.
I thought it, or in Java. Like,
The match is an expression, right? Like
Once it matches it, you don't need the return, or like the
no,
return.
I was
does it?
asking if in Java you have to have a break even though you're gonna return. Is that?
To be honest, in Java, I rarely use case
a
statements.
return. This is Java talk. So
Yeah, sorry.
So here's an example of actually using the match as an expression. So if you've got the same return type on all of your branches, which you actually have to do, but you can use it as an expression and actually capture that return value. If you do that, you need to add that semicolon on the end of the brace. Right? If you're not actually using the return value of a match expression, you can cheat, leave off the semicolon, it's fine. And this is actually true for all braced expressions. All braced expressions can be used, you can use the value, and if you do, you need to put a semicolon. And if you don't,
Well, it's because the let is a statement that
Right.
is using the expression of a match as its assigning part. Or I don't know what otherwise say.
well, technically, like you need the semicolon anyway. They just hard coded it so that they would they could infer it
Yeah, this,
if
the
you're not
semicolon-
using it in a larger.
Yeah, the semicolon
Statement.
is for the let statement.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, and that's pretty much like my enum section. Then I go over like option results specifically, if you're interested. But like for a lightning talk, that's probably plenty.
Oh, I'm all for more.
You want more?
Yeah, all listen.
All right. So option, we already looked at the definition, and it's used whenever something might be absent. So here's how you create the none variant, right? Just assign it none. So I specified the type that some will wrap here in those angle brackets. So here we've got generics again. And notice I don't have a use statement bringing into scope option. Remember in that dispenser thing I had that use dispenser colon star. Yeah, the reason we don't need to do that with option is it's in the standard prelude. That's the list of things from the standard library that are brought into scope by default. So for option result in several of the standard library enums, they'll just be in scope. Not all of them, but some of the most common ones as well.
A lot.
Yeah.
Shocking amounts.
Option and result are used all over the place. They're seriously the two most famous common enums. If you ever use option with a concrete type, it'll infer that type, so you don't need to specify it. So you can just like leave it out like that most of the time. There's a handy helper method called isSum that returns true if X is a sum variant. There's an isNone, does the opposite. There's a whole bunch of other useful methods, but I'm not going to go over them because there's like 45 of them.
Why does that work?
Why does what work?
The for and so the what
Ah,
options implement.
so
to iterate?
option implements into iterator, so you can treat it as a vector of 0 or 1 items. So you can actually go for I in an option, and if it is a sum, it will give you it in the I. So that's another way. You remember we did that if let before? This is exactly the same thing, only it's using a for.
That would throw me through a loop. I'd be.
You can also unwrap an option, and it will panic if it's a none.
Oh well, I know that one. That's all over.
Wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
It iterates over a non-iterable what?
It's iterable.
Yeah, it implements into iterator.
Option implements into iterator. It has 0 or 1 items. If it's a none, it has 0 items. And if it will,
I can't argue with that.
and if it's a sum, it has 1 item.
Okay.
You're blowing
So-
my mind right now.
You can also do that with your own user types. Like if you just make some weird struct, you can implement into iterator and use it in a for loop in some weird way if you want to.
But why would you want to do that? Why would you?
If you
'Cause
wanted
wanna
to
use a-
use map or filter or like some of those other iterator adapters, or if an iterator adapter returned an option and you wanted to keep going on in your chain. Yeah.
So you'd never use it like that,
situations. I've never seen anybody do this. No, that's a little bit weird.
But
It's a little weird.
But that's a really cool way to highlight that it implements.
Yeah.
That's very
It's
interesting.
like
Yeah.
it has all these capabilities. Go read them. Is
Yeah.
basically my point. And then we go on to result. So here's the definition of it. It's wrapped. So the type wrapped by OK and the type wrapped by error are different, right? We've got our T and E for any type and any error type. That's just, I want to point that out.
Oh, is that-
Like the first time I've shown a multi-parameter generic.
I think I've seen that in C++ where you have to use the return, right? Is that what that is?
That's what the must use annotation is. Yes, it will give you a warning if you don't inspect the result to see like what is it. And that's because Rust really wants you to decide what to do with errors. It doesn't want you to just, oh, oops, I didn't realize it was returning an error that I needed to look at, right? So let's see. Yeah. So here's like an example from the file system module here. I bring in file and I want to open a file, right? Well, the file might not get opened successfully, so it returns a result. But right here, I'm not doing anything with it, so if I try to compile that, I get this warning, right? Unused result, it must be used.
Why is that a warning and not an error if it must be used?
Because it doesn't force you to, but
Why not?
I don't know.
Well, you
Go
can
ask them.
conceive of an instance that you don't actually care, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Maybe
But then you just do assign you can assign underscore in Rust, can't you?
yes.
Yeah, so it should force you to at least ignore it.
So the way
But
to
I wonder
ignore
if
it
it would
is
say
go
you
let
didn't
underscore
use that.
equals.
Would it give you a warning if you didn't use a variable?
Yes. Hmm.
There's a lot of warnings.
Rust is a proper language,
But
just like Go.
you'll
or
notice
modern.
most Rust software will not have any warnings, right? The convention is you fix warnings. Like, I did a lot, I ran Gen 2 for 8 years. There's a lot of software that emits a lot of warnings and everyone just ignores it in C, right? Or in some other languages.
Running,
That is not typical in Rust.
compiling Linux from scratch and did the Linux from scratch project. It's
Warning,
like,
warning,
oh yeah,
warning,
most of these
warning.
tests may or may not pass, but it's okay, just continue. It's like,
Okay.
I guess.
So wait. You're saying you invent a language that's meant to make software safer and higher quality, and you don't want errors in it? This just doesn't make any sense.
I don't have
Well,
an
also
opinion
very-
over whether it should be a warning or error.
It's also very purposeful. They give you the constructs to acknowledge why you're doing something some way, which is what your next slide is for, right? Like if you kind of didn't care, you didn't have some mitigation strategy for the file not opening, it's still going to ask you to do something
Yeah.
to acknowledge that you made a conscious choice to not mitigate the error.
I think my point is just like most warnings are treated as errors in Rust.
Yeah.
There's also that in C, they can force warnings to be errors. You can't ignore them.
You
It's
can
also
do that
possible.
with Rust as well. You can add a config file or a command line argument to say, well, my warnings actually are errors.
Well, there's also the annotation you can put at the top of a module.
True.
Yeah.
True. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Okay, so what do you do with it? Like, okay, one thing we do with that result is we could just unwrap it. Unwrap it, super simple. If it was successful, it gives you the value. If it was unsuccessful, it panics and crashes. So you want to be careful with that one. Expect is actually exactly the same as unwrap, only it gives you a message with your panic. And let's see. So you can do things like, okay, well, if I check if it's an okay variant first, then unwrap will always succeed. So like this unwrap will actually never crash, right? And which I sort of like.
It better not.
You better not.
Some magic bit flipping.
Yeah. And of course, you can always just do your full pattern matching and say, okay, well, if it's an okay, I'll do something with my file. If it's an error, I'll do something else. And I don't have a slide for it. This is actually the end of the section. But like you could actually say, well, in my error case, I want to diverge. I want to return from the function or something like that. And then you could say like, I want my variable to be assigned the result of this match expression. Then it'll always get the file, or it will return for the function.
Assuming main wasn't like the main.
Well, even if you return from main, it exits the program. It's still
It
valid
would
code.
try to return so it converted to an int or something.
Oh yeah, so that's an interesting thing. Is the main function doesn't return an int in Rust. So you can return anything that implements I think it's the termination trait in Rust. So nothing implements the termination trait, which will just always be successful. There's also a standard process exit where you can specify an exit code, or there are errors. There are errors that implement the termination trait. So like if you
main can
return an
return a
error
result.
or a result implements termination trait. Anyway.
Something that's kind of interesting, right? So you're using the match, but you'll also see, and this is almost kind of like a pain point of Rust, is that like option and result, they have humongous amounts of methods that are just included in the standard library. And sometimes it could be like, I know kind of what I want, which one of these is gonna do
It takes
that?
a while to learn that.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, my examples later on in my intermediate course, I'll take some of these examples where I've done these match expressions. I'll be like, that is exactly what this method does. And I'll like highlight some of the methods.
Cargo Clippy is really nice for capturing
Yes.
some of that. Just
Yes.
how would I have known? I wouldn't have, and now I do.
So Clippy is a linter.
Oh, nice.
Well, I mean, so like it's a kind of the compiler has a base set of lints really
It
from
does.
its warnings. Clippy is just like, what
goes
if we
way
did
further.
that, but just a lot.
like
Like a lot.
take a step or two or three or four into the opinionated like direction.
Well, the cool thing about it too is Rust. It's not just warnings. The approach that they've taken is that you almost learn way more from the warnings than you would just.
Well, it's not
Yes.
almost. The compiler errors teach you
It's true. Yeah.
how to code better.
I actually have an example of this. So, like learning from the compiler. Okay, so I was having issues getting my type inference stuff working in CLion and then in VS Code.
Okay.
And there's like a whole story there. I talked about this in the Discord a little bit, but so I was trying to get this embedded. So I was using the Raspberry Pi Pico HAL and trying to write Snake on my Pi, and I had this little display. And then there's a board support package that lives on top of that HAL.
Okay.
And that board support package is just a macro for like all 40 pins and everything. Like it just, and the type inference stuff did not like that.
Yeah, macros are hard to for
At
the
all.
IDs and stuff to look into.
And so basically what I was doing is I was like just stumbling around through the dark because the macro wasn't well documented and it was bad. But if I just compiled, it would tell me like, oh, well, this was supposed to be this type, and I was like, oh, well, now I know what type that's variable is supposed to be. It was like stepping through it one step at a time, and I realized like, okay, this is not scalable. I got to figure out what the heck's going on with my type inference. But like, literally, like the compiler was like stepping me through and saying, okay, no, this is wrong. No, this type, and it's really,
You kind
it's really
of
good.
point out like an interesting difference in the development style of Rust. In like if I'm doing JavaScript, it's very much a write run, and I need to make sure to get to that code path to test like what are you going to do when I run you. And in Rust, it's very much write compile, write compile, write compile. I almost actually don't run the code that often.
Yeah, because when you run the code, that's the end.
Yeah, then that it probably works.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, like the compiler is your best friend when you're refactoring. Oh, I'm just going to change this type, try to compile, fix these 47 places. Okay, go fix the 47 places. Works.
I do that a lot in C++.
Yeah.
Just lean on the compiler.
Strongly typed has its advantages.
All right. Well, is that the end of your?
That's it.
Okay. I've got something I would like to bring to the fore.
Okay. There you go. You want me to take the
I'm going to move
the
over
monitor
there
spot?
so that I can be
I'm gonna go get some soda.
in the limelight.
Seriously, we're having intermission.
Intermission?
Nah, I mean I think we should end about 9. I've got a wife and kids to get home to,
My question is, how many other people out there do we know
and other work to
who,
do.
like Will, are saying to us, why haven't you told me about us?
Yeah, it's not my coworkers. They want me to shut up.
Well, we know which ones it's
Have you
not.
accepted Rust into your life?
We brought you here today because we care about you and we want to introduce you to Rust.
All right.
Your wireless streaming is amazing.
Holy cow! That's amazing.
What? Oh, your screen's still connected. Let me.
Yes, via this wireless connection.
Wow. All right, let's try it again.
That's the most high fidelity wireless HDMI connection I've ever had.
Okay, it looks like it's connected here. Let's see what I can do in terms of screens. Oh, good. Is everything mirrored then? Hey, Will.
I see your screen there.
Oh, okay. So you see the screen, you also see my face?
Yes.
All right, great. Great, then we'll just go on hoping. So, who here has heard of Zig other than the fact that I mentioned it earlier tonight?
I have.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, so what do you know about Zig? Why is it awesome? Okay, never mind. I'll just tell you. Zig is awesome. I mean, they even put it on their homepage.
Wait, why are we presenting about Zig?
We're gonna get there, Nathan.
Okay.
Patience.
It's a simple language, unlike Rust. It has a very simple compile time macro system, unlike Rust. It's extremely maintainable, just like Rust. And let's see, did they put cross compile in here?
No FFI.
Cross compilation.
Don't need it.
Cross compilation. So it's cross platform, and Rust is not really super cross platform.
What? What are you talking about?
FFI is slow.
Anyway, so
Slower than not.
the creator of Zig, this guy Andrew, he's got a little article. Well, I hate responsive design; it never works right. On how you can use Zig CC as a drop-in replacement for GCC or CLang, and you can actually get things that otherwise wouldn't cross-compile simply and easily to cross-compile simply and easily. So one of the big selling points of a Zig program is that if you write your program in Zig, then you can sit on your MacBook and you get basically the same benefits that you get with Go. That you can sit on your MacBook and you can compile it for Linux, or you can compile it for Mac, or you can compile it for Windows. And I think that this is really great. This is actually one of the core reasons that I have not joined that I have not yet been baptized into Rust, despite being the Rust. But no, because I'm not using Rust on a daily or a weekly basis. I'm using Rust very rarely.
Okay.
And the core reason for that is that it doesn't have certain features that I really, really care about and want.
Wait,
And
you haven't tried cross-compiling with Rust?
I have, and
Well-
we even had a presentation on it last year. It's terrible.
If I remember correctly, somebody integrated Zig into Cargo such that, is this what we're, yeah, that.
So the cargo thing I'm not sure about, but Zig can make cross compilation with Rust just work. So I'm going to go to webinstall.dev/Zig, because if you want to install Zig, I actually already have it installed, but I'm just going to show this for y'all's benefit or detriment or whatever it happens to be. But so I can get Zig on. Oh, I didn't actually have Zig installed on this yet, so this is perfect. Okay, so now I have Zig installed on this machine as soon as XZ finishes unpacking, because XZ is super slow, and then I put it into my path, and then boom. And now I can switch between versions of Zig if I want to. I don't know what the other version would be. Actually, 0.10.x, let's go to the beta. Oh, no, I have to do at master. That's where the beta's at. There we go. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to be using Zig at head, but maybe I actually shouldn't do that. I should go back to the 0.9 just to be safe. So actually I'll go back to 0.9.x. Okay. What? Why is it? Not .x. That's why. Okay, cool. So anyway, so now I've got Zig. So we got Zig version, and hopefully I've got Rust on here too. I might not actually have Rust on here yet. Let me check that. Oh no!
Slightly embarrassing.
Slightly embarrassing.
Will,
Okay.
can you teach
Is this a
me
fish
about-
What?
Is this fish or seashell?
This is fish.
Oh, okay.
This is
Random flavor, I see.
Fish is quality.
I like fish.
Ran myself in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
I love the dry humor on that so much. Okay, anyway, so this is my spare computer, not my main computer. I do have Rust properly installed on my main computer. Because reasons. Okay.
He did say he wasn't baptized into Rust yet.
Okay, well we're gonna get there. All right, cargo bin. There we go. So now I've added cargo bin to my path. Dang it. There we go.
Fish
Okay.
is not always easy.
There we go. Now I've got cargo. Okay, so, and I should have Rust up too, right? So let's go into temp, and then I always forget, is it Rust up in it or cargo in it? It's Rust up in it. No, it's cargo in it. Cargo in it. Rust up is for the toolchain.
You're gonna init your temp directory?
Oh, I don't give it
You don't want the cargo new project?
Yes, I want a cargo new. Thank you very much. So cargo new, hello world.
There you go.
I'll just call it hello. All right, so we're gonna go in here, we're gonna go into hello. And I don't know if I'm actually gonna be able to get this to work, but we're gonna see if following the instructions here will work. I tried before and it didn't work, but I was also,
You wanted to show us that?
well, so I believe that it could work, and I was trying a lot of things and I may have messed up a configuration somewhere, so this time,
Peter, believe.
we're just
As
gonna,
a side note, while he does this, in my experience, the cross compilation on Rust works best if you're on a Linux host. So if you want to cross compile for a lot of
Everything works better on Linux hosts.
Yeah. Preach it, brother.
Yeah.
so that might be true, we'll see.
I mean, I am a big fan of Apple on the desktop for my daily driving. I use Linux for everything else.
Yeah, and that's great. So what is it? x86 64. What's the name of the target for? Is it going to Linux unknown?
That's 86.
x86 64.
Is that it? What am I doing wrong?
Might be dash 60.
And then that doesn't make sense.
Something's wrong there. You can figure it out.
What do I do? Target list? Rust up target list.
Hey, look at that.
Hey, back.
Linux unknown Linux muscle. There we go. That's what I want.
Oh, that was music.
Well, yeah, GNU.
Musel? I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, muscle is nice because it can be statically linked. GNU typically has to be dynamically linked, which is weird because you'll get into these weird scenarios where, for different versions of the GNU standard library or whatnot, there are minor differences and they don't always play nice. So
Okay.
kind of a weird one. So static compilation is kind of the way. So muscle is basically your only choice for that.
And then where did my Windows go? Windows PC right here. GNU is probably what I need. All right, so I'm going to add. You have to add the cross-compile target still. Well, we'll see. You can teach me how to get this to work just right from here with the Hello World. That'd be great if we could get a Hello World to work with the standard toolchain.
With cross compilation. I've never needed to use it in anger, so I'm sure it wouldn't have rough
In
corners.
anger?
In anger. That's what you do. When you do it at work, it means you're using it in anger.
I was trying to use like Docker for cross building and then like the Linux kernel VM crash and like the
Yeah, see, you're already. I'm having palpitations as you speak. Okay, so but here's the weird thing: is that you need to be able to specify the CC as a single argument. You cannot have it as multiple arguments. So typically GCC is just one argument. But if it's Zig CC and then a target, that's multiple arguments. So what you have to do is you have to create a shell script. Let me make sure pathman add bin. Make sure bin's in there. Good. So we're going to create a ZCC and then we'll call this x64 Linux. Is what I'm going to call that. And so then here, I actually need to do the Zig list. I think I put that in the cheat sheet here. Do we have the Zig list targets? I think I actually listed that. Yeah, there we go. There's the common targets. So I'll just copy it from right here. So let's take our Linux muscle and we'll say the target is, whoops.
Let's all have our own list of target triples.
Hey,
I read that.
but Zig does it. Well, I guess maybe they should have the unknown in there as well, but anyway. So I don't need to have a path to. So here we go. So there's my little script, and I just say zig cc. I give it the target. This is the thing that's a little bit weird is the way that the Rust config is set up, and there's not a good way to. I guess there's not a good way to grab it by environmental variable or something to know what's being compiled. So you have to specify it both with Rust as well as with Zig CC. You have to specify the target two different ways. But let's go ahead and chmod a plus x, and might as well just do star because everything in bin should be executable, right? And then we
Safe commands.
what?
It's a safe command. Just every host, just chmod plus x star.
Well, no. It's bin star. All the stuff I put in bin is supposed to be executable. Okay, and so then.
And then do chown 777.
Yeah. Make the whole system executable. And,
No, it's my bin directory. It's my bin directory. If I
Yeah,
forgot
so
to make any
everybody
scripts,
should be able to execute.
I'm going to smack you in your. Okay,
Somebody need a nap?
Yes. All right. So that one we called it ZCC X64 Linux, which I could give it a longer name, but then I have to type more, and we're under the gun here. So I should be able to go into the cargo.toml should be right here, shouldn't it? Oh, whoops, duh. And then I'm supposed to go down here and add target, and I should have, oh bother, what was it? X86_64 unknown Linux
This makes sense.
musel.
So this is generally the case with Rust cross compilation. Is the cross compilation is pretty much built in pretty well for most combinations, but the linking's not. So this is
Well, and if any of your crates are going to depend on any C stuff that you're wrapping, then yeah, you're going to need this because good luck.
Not the cross compilations.
it's the linking that's harder. And so like all the things when I did my experiments with all the cross compilations on Mac, they all involved getting a linker from somewhere and setting a config to point to it. So this makes a lot more sense to me now. It's like, oh, what you're saying is you can use the zip
Use a zip
as a
linker,
zip linker.
and just use the cross compile Rust tool chain.
Yeah, so that
Makes sense.
That makes a ton of sense.
All right, so I don't know if this is actually going to work.
And
Makes a lot of sense.
if Zig made a linker that runs on Mac OS or other platforms,
Yes.
targets everything else, then you can just use the one Zig linker for all of the cross compilation. That's cool. That's cool because when I was doing my experience before, I had to, for each different platform I was cross compiling to, I had to go find a different linker solution
Yeah,
that
that makes sense.
worked on this host for that target.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I'm not just agreeing with everyone else.
Well, and the place where you really see this is when you're compiling for the embedded stuff. Like they all got like their own little.
The only time I've done cross compilation was for Raspberry Pi, but I could see this making that so much easier because it was a nightmare.
Well, and you can use this to cross-compile C code. You can use it to cross-compile Rust. You can use it to cross-compile Cgo.
Well, the time I had to do it, I was trying to build a Z-Wave home, like smart home thing on a Raspberry Pi, and it needed to cross-compile C code for the node library that was using the C code, and it was exploding every time. And yeah, so
Are we allowed to talk about Z-Wave here? Just one thing.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, in this building? Yeah, Vivin is hosting us.
We use Z-Wave.
Smart home. You want to talk about hacking smart
they,
homes?
they just figured out how to make it so it only works with their devices, right? No, I've looked into this because I had.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing. Somebody was trolling me in the comments because I run the Rust meetup and I have used Rust. I have used Rust. Anyway, so yeah, I think this is about where I got last time. So something didn't quite work right, and I'm going to get some help in the forums to try to figure out what's different between when this was written a year ago and now, and it also.
Retry with static.
What?
Instead of retry with static,
I-
instead of static pi. Scroll up. at the very
Scroll
top.
up.
For position independent.
Does not support retry with static instead. See, I don't even know what that means.
Or wait, no, that's PIC.
I mean, you can try copying the actual command, modifying it, and see if it'll go with that. Should probably just put it on one.
I stopped caring about cross compiling as much when GitHub introduced the free Windows, Mac, and Linux runners.
Oh, the GitHub Actions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well-
just
Cool.
curiosity as the
That can
building.
do it all natively for me in CI. I don't
And
think
and that would be cool if there was, if you want to point me to a simple way to do that.
Those three.
But I mean, I like the idea that as a programmer, that something that I create with my brain, I can actually execute myself, and I don't have to rely on an internet cloud provider to do simple things like compile it. But I mean, I think it's absurd that we as programmers, we ship all of our intellectual property to the cloud on proprietary systems that we cannot run or access in any other way. And so You know, it went from sweet, I can press F5 and I can see the new version of my web page to sweet, I can just git commit and do the PR and merge and then now I wait 20 minutes. Oh, great, the new site's up. You know.
Oh wait, the pipeline failed.
I think you're ready to be baptized now, man. It sounds pretty. That's a nice little sales brand there.
Yeah, I've got plenty of those. But anyway, so what is the suggestion that I do? What do I do from here? I don't know what this means. I don't code in C.
Well, we're assuming one of those files you touched had some static hide. Was that somewhere in one of those little wrappers?
Well, I was gonna say, search that output.
Wait, unused manifest key. That's a problem.
Yeah, maybe.
Unused manifest key. What did I not? Let me try this again. Cargo.
M64. I don't know if it's using the right.
Cargo target list. Was that what it
I
was?
think so.
No,
Oh, it was
it
rest up.
rest up
Target,
target?
yeah.
Rest up is toolchain. Okay, so target.
664 and
Okay, let's just make sure that because I think I typed it by hand and I absolutely 100% could have made a typo.
That's good.
Okay, and maybe I should try GNU just to see what
I was
happens.
complaining about in your cargo.tom.
Right, okay, but that was, yeah, so I could have made a typo there as well, so let's make sure target,
Look the same.
That's good.
No, there can be minor typos.
yeah, it could have been, there could be a
Are you
speck of,
supposed to use Zig as your compiler as well, or just for the link?
but, no, and the compiler.
Wait, is it linking with LD?
So I've got,
Oh,
I don't,
yeah, you're using your CC right there, and then you specify the linker.
well, maybe it doesn't like the muscle because it didn't like the static option, so let's just change this a little bit here, just to see if it'll work without muscle, although it's not of much use to me if it can't compile with muscle, because then, again, it's not cross-platform, because you deploy to any random Linux system, and who knows what the heck version of libc they'll have, and if anything will work.
Probably
See that.
So,
Let the distributions deal with them.
There you go. Your package manager will worry about it.
All right.
A different error.
Can't find stand.